I was recently tied up and put through some very cruel and unusual punishment. That punishment was watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Why Do I Even Bother Anymore. The best way to describe this film is, it's an utter waste of time. What was learned? What was gained? Nothing. Jones got back with Marion. Again. That is the only thing that was achieved throughout this entire film. And that is after they got together and split up, and they got together again and they split up again, and they got back together again and they got married, and now they've split up again and got back together again. Suppose you've got to go with what you know. God, this is all just so tiresome at this point. Not to mention it's completely unearned. It's a payoff with no setup. It just happens out of the blue for no reason. In the first film, at least Indy got the arc to the government and got together with Marion after an entire film of them together. In the third film, Jones repairs his relationship with his father, and it's really wholesome. The film's best element is the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. There's none of that here. There's exactly 2 wholesome moments throughout this entire film, which I liked in isolation. And that is the scene with Indy and Salah, and where Indy talks about the loss of his son and how his wife left him, and that is purely because Harrison Ford is putting everything he can into the acting of the scene. You know, what really surprises me is how little there is to sink your teeth into with this film, because things just happen with the loosest threads connecting them together, and so much happens that lacks any kind of relevance to the story. They should have called this film Indiana Jones and the Waste of My Fucking Time. It's the film equivalent of a bumbling, incoherent conspiracy theorist you'd find on the streets of Manchester, who's trying to argue about how the world is flat and how he didn't land on the moon. However, that would still have more internal consistency and self-awareness. Something Dial of Destiny couldn't hope to attain. Anyone who likes this film, I'm not mad, okay? I'm not mad. I'm curious why. When I watch Across the Spider-Verse, I understand why people like it, even if I don't think it's as great as everyone is raving on about. I understand why people like Picard Season 3, even if it's utter arse. But other than the opening sequence of the Second World War, I don't see anything to like about this film. It's amazing how few redeeming qualities this film possesses. But even the Second World War opening pales in comparison to any action sequence from any of the other films. The first 3 films' action scenes had more weight to them because of how slow and punchy they were, compared to how the action scenes in this film are so fast paced, they may as well be Fast and the Furious Part 1233, as well as just the dumb things that happen throughout that sequence. But I've got better things to do than go through the laundry list of problems, so let's just do the cliff notes of the story. And if you're worried about spoilers, then I do not care. I've warned you. So we start in the Second World War, and Jones is captured, oh no, and his English Oxford friend is captured as well. Jones is after the blade that drew the blood of Christ. He wants to stop the people I can't say the name of on YouTube because they will remove my monetization. He wants to prevent them from taking the blade back to Germany before the British can overrun their position. Jones is about to be hung for being a spy, but just before they do, a surprise birthday bomb flies through the roof and crashes into the floor of the building and explodes. Now, from my eye, this appears to be around the size of a £1,000 bomb, or maybe perhaps even a £2,000 bomb. I'd have to rewatch the film to know. I just remember it being too big to be something minor like a £500 bomb. Now, this bomb somehow blows up all the wooden floors, but not the fragile old stone walls. Wow, those must be some magic walls. But the explosion should be collapsing the whole building around them. For reference, I will show you a £2,000 bomb after being buried in 400 tons of sand to minimise the explosion damage to the buildings around it. The point I'm making here is the bomb wouldn't just blow up and take out every wooden floor in the building, it would destroy the bottom walls and supports, meaning Jones should be buried under this collapsed building. But hey, dumb action scene. So he doesn't die, but he escapes and goes after the train. He jumps on the train and fights some bad guys who, again, I'm not allowed to say the name of. He finds the blade as a fake and decides to stop the train because other treasures on it aren't fake. Jones runs into his friend from Oxford, and a German physicist on the train, and it just so happens that this German physicist has the dial of creatively bankrupt ideas, or at least half of it. Long story short, all the Germans on the train die. The German physicist hits a water tower at 80 miles an hour. Wow, that's a pretty violent death. The British blew up the bridge, and Jones and his Oxford friend jump off the train into the river, and as they get to the shore, the British are here! And they're now in friendly territory again, and we then jump to the future. Jones is old, and he's miserable. His wife left him, his son died in Vietnam. Excuse me? Died in Vietnam! Okay, that's an interesting turn of events. Turned out Shire was surprised by those trees speaking Vietnamese. Indy is no longer the assistant dean of the university that was established in the last film. He's now working as a teacher at some kind of college. He hates his job and his life. None of his students even care about the course they're on. And his students don't even like him either. On top of that, he's being forced into retirement. He basically has absolutely nothing. His life is just terrible.
He's been reduced to a feckless, bedwetting, parmesan-shaving imbecile who revels in his own uselessness.
Thank you, James May. I shouldn't be surprised that they took away the happy ending from Crystal Skull, but what else should we be expecting these days? They literally took every single thing away from him to make things absolutely terrible.
Daring today, aren't we?
This all feels a little familiar, doesn't it? Why do people think taking your heroes and making their lives miserable is somehow deep? You've taken away everything that they've earned through their trials and tribulations in the previous films because you're just too creatively bankrupt to build on top of it. A character should always be progressing forwards. That's why it's called development, not character regression. Forwards doesn't always mean going in the right direction, but forwards down their arc. You shouldn't just undo what your characters did or made their achievements redundant, because then what was the point of the previous adventures we've followed? If the Emperor wasn't really killed, the Republic was doomed to fail, and Luke Skywalker didn't even bring back the Jedi, his whole bloody purpose. The sequel trilogy makes all those events completely pointless. I constantly hear people defend this kind of writing by stating if you don't regress the characters, you can't do anything with them. You need to regress them for growth, which is a funny oxymoron. If you regress the characters just to rebuild them to where they were before, you've made your story redundant. Nothing was gained. What was the point? And most of the time, it's worse than that. Looking at Indiana Jones, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, just to name a few, they all end on much lower notes than where they were before the film took everything away from them. Most of the time, they don't even get it back or fix the problems which caused them to be miserable. They don't even get a meaningful redemption. All Indy got was an out of left field, unearned payoff that Marion wanted to get back together. This doesn't work because the problems that pushed her away aren't fixed. And he doesn't resolve any of the other issues that made his life miserable. All Luke got was a hollow redemption that didn't fix any of the issues he had created by his action or inactions. His death is unsatisfying because it was incredibly odd for this new superpower this film created to cause sudden death. He ended a broken failure where none of his achievements meant anything other than perhaps blowing up the first Death Star. But hey, he learned from his failures, right? Well, no, he didn't, because he's dead. This means any lessons he did learn from failures can't guide his future actions, which is the whole point of a lesson. Han Solo was treated worse because all he did was die without fixing his marriage or redeeming his son. It is disrespectful to these characters people care about to just destroy them and leave them destroyed and act like what you did was some kind of high art no one else can appreciate. I think it's pretty fair for people to be pissed off by that. This isn't to say a character can't stumble, or have low moments, or even lose their way, but when they find their way back to the path, they should be in a better position than they were initially. Otherwise, that just isn't growth, that's taking 12 steps back and 1 step forwards. We aren't asking for perfect characters that can never grow or be flawed. We're asking you that you don't regress the characters just to give them a hollow redemption that isn't meaningful to the story. And I want to point out that in my script, redemption is written in 50 sets of quotation marks. It's lazy, creatively bankrupt, and pretending that is the only way you can give an old character an arc is delusional. You can build off characters' past progression, past their original stories, in many ways. Exhibit A, the Thrawn trilogy, because undoing the previous films and having your characters be miserable just feels like the writing equivalent of being a contrarian. You're just doing it simply for opposing what the audience wants and pretending that is deep. Everything in a story works mechanically. If you do nothing with it mechanically, and it just exists, it has no purpose, it's pointless, and funnily enough, that's how I would describe this film. I talk about mechanics a lot and the surface level when looking at very edgy works because people think that the darker elements of their work somehow make it good within themselves, and it's a very common amateur writing trope. These darker elements often don't serve any purpose in the narrative other than being dark and edgy to try and shock the audience into thinking it's deeper than it is, and it's very similar when you often look at character regression from legacy characters. It is often incredibly shallow and surface level with no deeper mechanics below the surface level. Indy being miserable is meaningless in the story. It doesn't even motivate him to do anything. At most, it plays into his want to stay in the past because it's better than his own boring, miserable existence. If you're gonna have Indy be miserable, it's got to play somehow into the story. It has to serve some kind of purpose. But better yet, just don't do it in the first place. If you personally want my suggestion on how Indy can progress from here, maybe kind of go an Incredibles route. Indy is tired of the monotony of his everyday married life and misses the adventures he used to go on in the old days. The nostalgia would be treated as a flaw, but it's understandable since Indy loves the adventure. Have Indy contemplate his own mortality. If he doesn't go on another adventure now, he might never be able to again. In another 10 years, he might not be able to get out of his own bloody bed by himself. He feels like if he doesn't do it now, he might regret it forever. And this can cause conflict with Marion. Indy can reunite with old friends. There are many storytelling opportunities here for character dynamics, but of course, that is if you have to make an Indiana Jones film. If it was my choice, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. I prefer it being preserved than people constantly messing with it. I am so incredibly tired of people pretending that these soulless cash grabs must be made, like it's mandatory, like it's somehow better having a terrible story that damages what came before than nothing at all. To be quite honest, I would prefer to have nothing, because quite frankly, nothing is far better than anything that we've been getting. Anyway, it's the day of the moon landing and everyone is happy other than Indy. Okay, the moon landing is an interesting choice. Certainly not what I expected. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but they focus it a lot that it must play some kind of role in the film. Spoilers, it doesn't. It's basically a backdrop for a few action scenes and plays a small role in the antagonist position that you could quite easily remove, and it would cut so much pointless fat. So Indy goes to work and his students don't care about anything he's teaching them, and he's teaching them about Archimedes, which is a bit of a coincidence considering what this story's about, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge is there, and she's answering all the questions correctly when no one else is even bothering. None of them did the homework to actually learn what's going to be on the test. Well, this entire class is going to fail then. A bit pointless for him to be here. Maybe that's why they're forcing him into retirement, because all his class are failing their grades. Indy's class is then cut short by the moon landing and he just gives up and walks off. Okay. And the teachers start praising him, saying goodbye, now Indy is retiring, and wait, is this I thought this was in the middle of the day, just leaving work and retiring now? Oh, okay, alright then. You know, what is he going to do now he's retiring? Or maybe that's one of the points that the film's making, because he doesn't really have anything else in his life. So Indy leaves and goes to the bar. He's celebrating his retirement by himself, all alone. Then Phoebe Waller-Bridge turns up, and it turns out that she's his goddaughter, and the daughter of his Oxford friend from the flashback at the start of the film. She says that she's studying the Dial of Poodoo, The thing that they found in Germany towards the ends of the war. She says she's figured out where it fell into the river, but it's all a ploy because she wants to get Indy to tell her where he hid it. We cut away to the German physicist. He somehow survived getting hit in the face of water tower 80 miles an hour. Wow, that Aryan blood must be pretty superior if he can survive something that's impossible for humans to survive. But okay. It turns out that he helped NASA get to the moon. Because of that, the CIA is willing to do anything for him. Intriguing, incorporating Operation Paperclip into the story. It could have some potential. Shame it's in this story. And they tell you that he is responsible for landing on the moon so many times. They even have him be racist towards a black man so that they can wave it in his face that he should be kissing his boots, because otherwise they wouldn't have landed on the moon without him. Not that you can't have a racist villain, but man, it's just so awkward of a scene. Mechanics, characters, plot, relevance, purpose. We go to the college archive where Indy put half of the Dial of Insanity. It's explained that Archimedes, the Archimedes, was such a great mathematician, he invented time travel. What? He what now? He was so good at maths, he could tear a hole in the fabric of reality using gears.
Right.
It's worth mentioning how creatively bankrupt you must be to make an Indiana Jones movie about time travel. Indiana Jones story concepts aren't that hard to come up with. We've only covered the Ark of the Covenant, Crystal Skulls, Voodoo, and the Holy Grail. Do you have any idea how much mythology there is? How much history there is you can pull from to explore? How do you stoop so low to make an Indiana Jones film about history and mythology you just made up? Of course, there was always a level of fiction and over-romanticized events, as well as elements of mythology that were changed or made up to better make the films work, but the core of it was based on something which had a certain amount of belief about it. Hey, you know this mythological thing that everyone thinks is fake? Well, what if it was true? It made it more tangible. Compared to Archimedes inventing time travel, you've just turned this into Red Alert, but those are funny. This is just depressing.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism.
As they exposit the story, the goons and the CIA are looking around Indy's college because they're following Phoebe Waller-Bridge. It's a good thing that Phoebe Waller-Bridge didn't wait another day, because if she had waited any longer, Jones wouldn't have access to the college archive before retiring. So the CIA goons as well, they're sent after Phoebe Waller-Bridge after she backed out of a deal to the German physicist to sell him the Dial of Depravity. She instead betrayed him to sell it on the black market, which begs the question of what the hell is going on here. He sent the goons when she hasn't had the chance to acquire it and had the opportunity to betray him yet. This is very muddy. I'm also curious on why she went to deal with the German physicist in the first place. It's not like she needed anything from him to get the Dial of Sleep Depravity, and she knows Indy has it. You know, just more continuity problems to add to the fire. The goons kill 2 NPCs patrolling around the hallways, which act like the AI of a Hitman game. No, worse, the AI of Oblivion. Why did they kill them? No witnesses, even though they didn't witness anything. There isn't any reason why they're looking around. They know what they're looking for. They're hoping that Phoebe Waller-Bridge will lead them to the Dial of dodgy Tesco discounts. So why are they turning offices upside down? Oh god, this is just so dumb. These are dumb goons. They storm inside the archive with guns drawn, ready to kill. There is a fight and Jones and Phoebe grab the Dial of Bankruptcy and escape. She then, for no reason, betrays him, stealing the Dial of Damnation and locking them inside with the CIA goons trying to kill him. Why did she do this? Why did she betray her godfather and leave him to die? Someone who has always been incredibly nice to her and was a close friend of her father? Because she wanted to steal it from him to sell on the black market. Wow. What a cunt. Am I supposed to root for this terrible person? The story never calls her out on this, by the way. They never call her out on leaving him for dead, And not to mention, I really don't like her. She is such a smug, condescending prick with an extraordinarily punchable face. Indy gets out of the room and finds 2 of his colleagues dead. He calls the police, but he's captured by the goons. There is a chase throughout the moon landing parade, and he escapes again. He then goes to Salah. Oh god, man, I've missed Salah. Salah finds where Phoebe Waller-Bridge is going to go and how she will sell it on the black market. How he found this out? I don't know, but I'm going to let it slide. It's then explained that Indiana Jones is wanted for murder, so he can't go back. Hold back up a second. Hold on. Indy's wanted for murder. How? Why? How do they even place him at the scene of the crime? They act like he's been framed, but like, what evidence is there to frame him? He already left his work for the final time before retirement. They could have identified him through his voice when the police called, but why would they think he called them to a place where he just shot 2 people? Surely they would need more evidence to try and convict him, right? There can't be enough to prove that he did this. Did the CIA blame him? I guess so. But I don't know why. And I'm really curious why Indy thinks that getting the dial of Kathleen Kennedy will somehow clear his name. It makes no sense. This is the whole inciting incident for your story, and it is fundamentally broken. The story acts like this is something he has to do to clear his name, but it's never explained how it's going to clear his name. It's never even resolved in the story. Him being framed for murder is just completely forgotten about. So, to me, this smells of reshoots. I also want to point out that the black CIA woman called the German goons gun-happy crackers. Oh, that's very awkward having racial slurs in your film. I wonder if the Germans get away with calling her the N-word. Actually, that would be pretty entertaining. How terrible that would be. Do that film, I bloody dare you. Anyway, Salah explains how Indy got his family out of Egypt before the Second World War started, and that's kinda nice. I like how Indy looks out for his friends, it's really wholesome. Salah even wanted to go with Indy because he misses the adventure, but he says no. Come on, Indy, let Salah come with. He's a really nice and wholesome guy, I really like him. He would instantly improve this film, but, I guess it wasn't to be. So Indy is on the run, and he travels to Morocco. He instantly finds the private black market auction and walks in while it's being held. He interrupts Phoebe Waller-Bridge trying to sell the dial of didgeridoos to the people on the black market, and all of a sudden, the German physicist turns up and he's like, hey, it's strange how, you were gonna sell me the dial, and you're just flogging it here. And Jones recognises the German that he punched in the face once and then watched die. Not sure why he doesn't question why he's not dead. Anyway, the German gets away with the dial because of a big fight. Phoebe and Jones chase him, but they're stopped by the Moroccan police. But seconds later, they all run away because the Moroccan mafia shows up. Wow, this is, everyone's just showing up to the party today. The story really loves and thens instead of because ofs. The leader is upset with Phoebe Waller-Bridge because he bailed her out of jail if she promised to marry him. But she actually bamboozled him the entire time. Wow, she really is just a terrible human being. She even brags about breaking his heart. What a bitch. The mafia then chases her and Jones while they're chasing the German before he can get away with the dial of mediocrity. Throughout the entire chase, the mafia leader is simping for Phoebe, and all of this takes place in what must be the world's fastest tuk-tuks, looking like a cheap Top Gear race. No, I'll take that back, because that would have better production value and be more entertaining.
That's not as effective as I hoped it would be.
Jones asks then what her father would think of her if he could see her now and what she'd become, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge replies by saying, what? Beautiful? Attractive? Self-sufficient? Right, okay. I'm not usually one to attack someone's physical appearance, but, look, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, she ain't all that, okay? Everyone in this film simps for her. She says herself that she's beautiful, and People in the film keep having their heads turned by her, but she's possibly the most mid I have ever seen from a woman. She's not attractive, but she's not fat and ugly. But she's just condescending and has a punchable face. It's just very jarring to constantly hear this film decree how attractive she is when she just isn't. I've seen more attractive slags working behind the counter at Tesco. Anyway, the German physicist kills the CIA woman. Okay, not sure what the point of that character was. She didn't do anything but die and say a racial slur. What a great character. Having the CIA be the villains of your film could have been an interesting choice, but hey, missed opportunities. We then travel to Greece, I think. I can't be bothered to remember. They meet up with a Spaniard who's an old friend of Indy. Phoebe Waller-Bridge asks Indy if he could travel anywhere with the dial of testicles. What time period would he go to? And Indy replies that he would stop his son from enlisting. He then talks about how it destroyed his and Marriott's relationship and affected them both badly. So much so that she left him because he couldn't console her in her pain. It's a nice moment. Harrison Ford is really trying to give its best, and it's possibly one of the only pleasant moments in this entire film. They then go for a splash, recover the wax tablet with an encrypted code on. How did no one recover this tablet before? It's in shallow water. You can't tell me that no one has came across this wreck. It's been sat there for 2,000 years. The original explorers even knew about this deeper wreck, but never bothered to try and explore the other half. I'm surprised they didn't even mention it to anyone else so that someone else could try and explore it, because who knows what they're going to find on the other half. But whatever. And when they get back to the top, the German and his goons appear. They kill the Spanish sailors, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge tells the German what's on the tablet in exchange for money. All the while being a smug, uncharismatic, condescending prick that she continues to be throughout this entire film. But surprise, she actually had a stick of dynamite that she ignited with a cigarette butt and threw it at the Germans. This is considered an incredibly smart move when she gave the Germans precisely what he asked for, and then they ran away. She has no reason to think that the top of the tablet was a misdirection, even if it was heavy. And Indy is rightfully upset that his friends just died before him, and she just made light of the whole situation. She, from his perspective, made his sacrifice worth nothing and told the Germans exactly where the dial was. But surprise, she somehow knew the wax tablet was a misdirection the entire time, because it was heavy. Wow, what an incredibly sweet line of reasoning. But apparently she's right. There was a gold tablet inside the entire time, so they melt the wax and they get it and they go to Sicily. The German, however, realizes they aren't going east like they said it was. They're going west. And with that knowledge, he follows them perfectly to Sicily. Somehow, despite the massive head start, they didn't notice the Germans following them throughout the entire trip in a pathetic little dinghy. Indy doesn't even have a motivation to find the other half of the dial of director's mistakes. They could just throw the gold tablet in the ocean and walk away. That is the only thing that could lead them to the other half of the dial of misfortune. And Indy is fully aware of this fact. But the writers forget that Indy doesn't want to find the dial. He wanted to find the Holy Grail, he wanted to find the Ark, but his entire motivation in this story is to prove he's innocent and go home so that he can live his life again. Even if it doesn't make any sense, that is the goal that the film establishes. His other goal is to stop the Germans from getting the dial, which dropping the tablet in the ocean does. From here, the Germans have nothing but misdirection. They will never find it without the tablet. So why is he even going to Sicily? Even if the Germans don't follow them, if he finds it, all they have to do to get both halves is find him, which is much easier. Great that this plot is held together by nothing more than some gum they found under a desk, which, God, that still might be complicating the writing a little bit too much. They go to Sicily and find the tomb of Archimedes, and he has a plane engraved on the side of his tomb, and he has a modern wristwatch. They finally put the dial of doohickey together, and just at that moment, the Germans show up. Oh my goodness. They fight, and the Germans shoot Jones. Phoebe and the other character, which hasn't even been relevant enough to be worth mentioning, they both run away. Despite having no reason to, the German decides to take Jones with them, and he will be bleeding out throughout the rest of the film. which will be forgotten about until the final few minutes. They then take Jones to an airfield full of a ton of Nazis in uniform, marching around with a World War II bomber. The plan is that they're going to use the plane to travel back in time and kill Hitler so he can take over Germany and win the Second World War. To this plan, he doesn't bring back any aircraft or weapons or anything else which would be a massive advantage with the resources that he has, which would level the playing field. His only plan is to use the knowledge to try and stop the fall of Germany, which it's not a great plan, but whatever. It also opens up a few questions, like how did he know that he would need a plane to fly through the time hole? For all he knew, it could just transport you where you're standing, or the plane could be too big, or who bloody knows what. He had no idea he'd be going to Sicily, so how can he organise all of this so fast? Where did all of this even come from? Why is he even bringing Indy? Why is he even leaving Indy alive at all? God, the story just hurts my brain. They all get on the plane, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge jumps onto the plane's landing gear and climbs into the plane's wing. They then fly through the time hole.
A time hole.
Don't help him. It's a time hole. No, it isn't. It's nothing like a time hole.
It's a time hole.
It is. It's a time hole. That is quite obviously a blue giant about to go supernova. That is a time hole.
The evil villain is happy and he's about to win the war by killing Hitler. But then suddenly, Jones starts laughing and the villain gets upset. Indy tells him Archimedes didn't know about continental drift, so he doesn't know where they're going, but it's not 1944. And this is a big shock, and the evil German tells them all to turn around immediately, but it's too late, and the hole sucks them in. Instead of being brought back to Germany 25 years ago, they're taken back to Sicily 2,100 years ago. This is the equivalent of walking down to your corner shop, going around the wrong road and accidentally crashing into London. So they fly close to the water and the Romans invading Sicily fire up at them. Instead of flying away and back towards the time hole, the Germans think it's a bright idea to open up the door's planes and shoot at the Romans. What intelligent villains. Most of the Germans die because Phoebe Waller-Bridge just drops them out the bomb bay, then Indy and Phoebe both jump out of the plane as it crashes into the ground. The plane crash scares away the Romans and they all run away. All the Germans die, but who shows up other than Archimedes himself? He picks up the dial of nonsense and he runs over to Indy and Phoebe. Jones then suddenly remembers that he's been bleeding out for the last 30 minutes from a gunshot wound to the chest, and he starts dying because of it. They speak ancient Greek to Archimedes, and Jones says this is all he's ever wanted. He's been digging up history his entire life, and now he gets to see it for himself, and he has nothing back home, so he wants to stay. But Phoebe says, "No, you can't stay," and punches him in the face, knocking him out. Thank you for giving the bleeding out 80-year-old man a concussion. But then Indy wakes up and he's suddenly back home. Indy then tells Phoebe that he wanted to stay because there wasn't anything left for him back in 1969. But suddenly, surprise! Marion from the first film turns up. She's back now. How? Why? They never explain it. So that whole thing about their son dying and it ruined their relationship, well, that's never fixed, but they got back together. Amazing how they never earned that payoff. It just happens. Wasn't Indy also wanted by the police because he was framed for murder? Well, I guess that doesn't matter. At the end, nothing was gained. That's where the story just ends. What a sad and miserable ending to Indiana Jones. Such a beloved character. I would be upset, but I just don't even care anymore. The last film, while not that great, still respected Indiana Jones and didn't tear him down and then leave him torn down. This is why I advocate for not turning things into franchises, because you just don't need to constantly keep making more of them all the time. It's better to leave audiences wanting more instead of giving them fatigue from how much garbage you're giving them. I just went through the whole story and so little happens. I skipped over so much of the story because it's just not even relevant. It's a nothing burger of a film. I don't even understand why this film makes people angry, because what did you expect? We knew it was going to be terrible, and this is precisely what you should be expecting from Hollywood and Lucasfilm these days anyway. We've seen this song and dance so many times. How is it shocking anymore? How does anyone even care about these soulless sequels? Indy is old and nobody likes him. The villain is dumb. I have no reason to feel intimidated or care about him at all. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is a smug, obnoxious cunt who's a horrible person, but the film never calls her out on it or makes her regret the terrible things she's done. Her whole arc is supposed to show that she cares more about money, but that whole arc is only in one line of the film that makes her change suddenly from wanting to sell things to doing the right thing. That is unearned and superficial. That is one of the most shallowest arcs you can ever give a character. It doesn't undo any of her wrongs or make her regret them so that she won't do it again. And what the cherry on the cake is that she calls Indiana Jones a grave robber when she's infinitely worse. What Jones does is actually heroic. People act like he's stealing, but the people he is stealing from have been dead for hundreds or thousands of years. The items he takes are to be brought to museums to be studied so we can learn more about their past and history. If he doesn't, someone else will get them, likely selling them to the black market to go in private collections, never to be seen again. They could be lost for all time. Acting like what he does is some kind of moral evil is delusional. What Indy does isn't out of any kind of selfish greed for money. He is motivated by protecting and learning history. So if any of you tell me Jones is evil, I reserve the right to violently beat your ass with a tire iron for morally oversimplifying complex topics, you absolute git. There is an entire character in this film I didn't even mention, because he just does nothing other than follow them everywhere. You could cut him out entirely, and all that would change is that he doesn't fly the plane that takes them home. You know what, I'm going to go even a step further. You could cut out the entire middle of this film and just have them show up at the tomb, and nothing would change, because the whole middle of this film is pointless chaff. And I'm not even talking about if Jones wasn't there, the Germans would have failed and killed themselves. I'm talking about Jones' adventures to Morocco is pointless. Going to Greece is pointless. The only parts of relevance where anything happens are at the very beginning and at the very end. And I should never, ever be able to say that about your film. Because everything in a film, oh God, I keep saying this, but it has to have a point. If it doesn't, it's just fat that needs to be cut. Oh God, I'm repeating myself at this point. You know, there's other things I could say about this film, and there are plenty of other problems to point out, but you get the point. There isn't any reason to continue this. You know the film's bad, I know the film's bad, let's just settle it here and let's get on to doing more important things, because I've got better things to do with my life. If I was cringe, I would ask you to subscribe, but honestly, I feel too dead inside to even care about a number under my name that means nothing. I can only wade through so much garbage before I stop feeling emotions and my brain starts to shut down to protect itself, and I just slowly degrade mentally for your own entertainment. As always, my links are in the description if I can be bothered to put them there. I can't think of anything else, so I'm just going to leave you here now. Goodbye. I'm going to read some books to bleach the bad writing out of my brain.